All right, so we are here with Brother Nathan Thomas, and we thought it would be a really interesting thing to talk with some of our veterans at our church, especially with the theme for revolution. We know the spirit of revolution, and also behind that is contending for the faith, which is from Jude chapter 3. We want to talk with some of our veterans about some of their experiences in the military in order to try and merge these ideas and really help us understand some of the enthusiasm or some of the ways in which God wanted us to really fight spiritually, and also sometimes you do have to fight physically, as we know Brother Nathan is aware of. And so if you would, Brother Nathan, just give us a little introduction of yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do here at Life Tabernacle, but also some military background, where you served, and what branch of service you served in.
I was in the Army. First of all, I was in the National Guard. I did that for about 3 years to see if I liked it. I remember when people was coming back from Vietnam, I would see them on news and different places, and I seen how they got spat up on, and they wasn't welcome. They called them baby killers. The media kind of started then portraying people fighting for freedom as bad people. So at that time I knew one day I was going to get in the military and I was going to fight for my country, and I was going to try to make up for that if I could. And always to this day, if I see somebody with a Vietnam shirt or tag that they get out of the car of, or Korea or any kind of war, I always welcome them home. That's something that everybody should do, because a lot of them didn't get a welcome home. In them days it was proper. So anyway, actually I was Cub Scout, Boy Scout, Weeblo Boy Scout. I've been volunteers in many community groups and stuff, Special Olympics, stuff like that. But I did, after the Guard, I did regular Army for a while. I was in the Gulf War, 7.5 months, 24th Infantry Division. Then I got out and I finished up my time in the Guard, and then, I got out. Here, I'm over the head usher, and which is part of security, making sure we bring people in from 5 parishes, which are counties in some places. And you never know what might come in. They might be on any type of drug. They may come in calm. They may react just sporadically erratic at any time. But yet these people need to come to church too and need to know the Lord. So they have to have a chance. Some churches in the area, some of our same brand, so to speak, don't even want to put up with them. They don't want to have nothing to do with them. So that's a calling that I have too, because in the Lord's Army you could be called to do anything, which I've been backup bus driver, I've ran a route, my wife is over getting the drivers and etc. For the buses every Sunday morning. And anything I can do around the church, anything I see to do. There's some things I do regularly, some things I'm the only person that does them. And then anytime somebody needs some help that I can, have the time or whatever to do, I do that also, because church isn't one person's job, it's everybody.
Yes. And we see you, of course, working often, doing various things. I would like to, ask you, what's one of the most interesting things you've done in serving with church? But that's not really the conversation. We do want to talk about that military background. So I have a question here. I just want to kind of jump right into it and ask you, what is perhaps the most hostile, if you could tell us, the most hostile combat situation you've ever encountered, and how do you handle that situation serving?
We was coming down a road, and this side of the Euphrates River, Baghdad was on the other side, and Basra was down, I'm thinking south of us. And we had Iraqi soldiers coming, and we don't know who all else was coming in from many different sides. And at that point, you can't panic, and you don't just start firing on everybody. We didn't really have a lot of intel, meaning that nobody had warned us ahead of time that all these people was coming from all these different sides. But we started noticing at this particular time, there was some of them coming in from, they call it the Death Highway, Kuwait. And they was being pushed from Kuwait because some of our troops, it might have been some UK or Britain troops in there with them, had drove them back, and they was leaving thinking they was getting away, but they didn't know we was there. But most of them was unarmed and had already been, if they was in vehicles, they had already been pretty much taken care of from the air. But these mainly were barefooted, bleeding feet, trying to trade a dog tag for maku. We figured that was food, and they was kind of swarming us because they was hungry. So we realized that most of them, are pretty much all of them, didn't have guns. We had air cover. They was getting back with us with helicopters saying that they saw no, if any arms, it must have been very little. So we squelched that mainly by just giving them food, which was a real scary at times, but touching things when you see people just sit down and tear open a meal and eating it without even us being able to explain how you put water with them and reactivate things. But it was almost like a little picnic right there, and you realize how human people are when they're in a hunger situation. And that happened to be like a humanitarian thing. That's mostly them. We had some flatbed trucks that was pulled in with some, you would call them 18-wheeler trucks or whatever. And they just got on and was swinging their legs, and we had MPs come and follow them, and we just took them off. And that happened to be a good one, which could have been scary when we seen them all coming from all different directions. But that's something I'll tell about. There's some things that I wouldn't be able to hold much of a good face about.
I'm sure it's obviously a very taxing situation. It's information that we learn from observing history, reading books. So, in fact, one of my favorite books, I don't know if you've heard of it, is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien.
No, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so he wrote just a lot about the physical toil, the mental toil that soldiers endure. He served in the military. He honestly didn't want to go. He was drafted, but he served his time. And he elaborated so much about just the intricacies of each unit, what happens when you are in that type of environment. And I don't know if you feel compelled to just kind of talk about maybe some of the mental taxation that soldiers endure. I try to imagine just keeping your calm in that situation. You just explained, like, how do you deal with that?
Well, now I know before, I would say, the war that I entered in, as far as going into Iraq, before that, when we was building up, I was in the ammo unit at first. That was my first job, was in ammo. So we brought in ammo from off of ships, and we brought them into a ASP, which is an ammunition supply point, which was a holding area until we moved forward. And we had tents by, and every now and then AT&T would get a hold of our unit or whatever and say, we got a camouflage net area set up with some phones. It'd be on a plywood floor, and they would be covered, and they would pick out so many people, say we could go and we'd talk on the phone back to the States. It might be 10 minutes. It'd have people standing around making sure you said nothing you wasn't supposed to do. If so, you would get removed from the phone. But as soon as we got back, that was a pretty rough time, because people would be crying, and you asked them what's wrong, and another wife told their husband, which when they got off the phone told them that their wife had been going out partying, cheating on them and stuff like that. And you would hear things. Sometimes yours might have been right or not, but you have no way of knowing until you get back to the States.
Right.
And it would really get mental. And I would think, this can get into your mind, so when you go into combat, you cannot do what you're supposed to do. So you have to kind of, that and other things, which some things are deeper and some things are more real in the right now, you have to just choose to remove things from your mind because they can snowball and you are no good. You're no good as a soldier or a person that they've sent over there to take care of a job that you need to do, whether it be take care of the enemy or whatever it may be, just your regular job, making sure ammo gets to the right people and the right amounts and types of ammo. So there's a lot of things that people don't think about that just in the human aspect of it, and people get letters that this just happened. And you got to learn to put away some of your feelings and your hurts to help somebody that may be weaker than you.
Do you feel like families are, I never thought about this, like prepared to have a spouse or relative in the military so that they know, you know what, maybe this isn't a good time to bring this topic up because they are in a very taxing situation? Are families like prepared for that type of?
When they're back back in the States or whatever, they are briefed when their spouse leaves that these things are going to be coming up. They may be writing about them. They may have fears. These are some of the fears they may come out with. So I'm letting you know ahead of time. Don't be just shocked and just overwhelmed because this is part of war. It's part of the unknown, and then they're also briefed before we come back to be ready for some of the things and some of the things not to ask us about. Let us come out and say it on our own. And don't ask pointed questions, especially like, somebody comes back from war, especially kids, did you kill anybody? That's that's not something, that you ask people. But it is, the family, they don't know. They've never had somebody where somebody's fixing to go. They've never had nobody come back from someplace that, as a kid, you may see a cowboy movie or a war movie and go, hey, I want to do that someday. And even myself, that's something I figured that was the ultimate price was going to fight for your country. So when you get on to somebody about not doing something, about your freedoms and stuff, you can say, I had a stake in it. But yet, when you get in it, it can take you places that you didn't think about when you wanted to go.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm wondering at times, do you consider your military background when you think about your spiritual warfare? We read about Ephesians 6, take on the whole armor of God, and we try to imagine that Roman soldier or even a modern day soldier. But do you pull from your military experience sometime when you really read chapters like that about putting on the whole armor of God and or like Jude 3, contending for the faith, and how does that help you stay spiritually focused and set to kind of continue in that?
Well, you have certain gear that they give you to put on. And if you don't have that gear on and you was to say, get fired upon, and you don't have the gear that they gave you to use, that could be right where a bullet would hit you. Now, if it hit you in a place where, say, you had a helmet on, it would be fine. But to go to talk about the whole armor I got, you can't pick out where a fiery dart in the Bible or a bullet in real combat is going to come from, or where it's going to hit. You don't get the privilege of picking that out. So yes, if you do not suit up with all you're capable of using and what you have at your disposal as far as protection, then it can be the difference of life and death. And in the spiritual world, the same thing. The devil he uses tactics that he's not going to use what you think he's going to use. He's going to use things. He's going to use your own family sometime. He's going to use people in your church sometime. It may be one sentence they say to you that brings back something that was terrible in your past, and you have to be ready for that. Whether it's a small thing or a big thing, you don't know how it's going to happen, and the devil is the best at his job. It's just like your enemy. Your enemy studies you. They've looked back through the years, just like a football team or a basketball team looks at film. They see your weaknesses. So don't think that you can outsmart if you don't have that whole armor, and you don't have your mind and your prayer, which is part of your armor too, really. If you don't have that, then you can be caught off guard.
Yeah, I like what you say, about being ready, but it's also staying ready, even when you're tired. Because I'm sure you had many, many times when you were exhausted, but you still had to put on your gear, right? But
you do. You don't. It's not like you're off work and you're down the road and you stop and got you a Coke and a pecan pie to eat or something. You always got to be ready in that. Same thing with the spiritual world. You don't have time off.
Right.
They don't say, well, he's out of church now, we're going to leave him alone.
Right.
That's where really you're going to be more caught unaware than you would when you know it's supposed to be coming at you. So you don't really have an off time. You got to be alert. You got to be eyes aware, because anytime he knows you're weak, or anytime he knows that you're relaxing, that's when he's going to get you for sure.
Right. So how do you convey such a message to young people, for our America's Youth Conference, who don't have that type of understanding, who are so disconnected from military life? I would even say the history. I don't think a lot of our youth necessarily dive into the books and appreciate the war efforts that have been, and then what certain current soldiers who are even serving. So they don't even have that to draw from. How can you, or what would you say to a young person when the scripture tells us these things, right, about contending for the faith, and they tell us about Ephesians 6, how can they connect in some type of way, or what, do they draw from?
Well, if you have a hobby, or you have a hobby that you eventually want to be your job, something that you can enjoy as well as having fun with, it's something that you've always had an interest in. A man or a young man may like to hunt. Well, if you're going to get the most out of your hunting experience, or you hunt for the meat, which most people, especially in the South, they don't just hunt for fun. They use the meat. They eat the meat. Well, if you're going to be good at anything, you've got to read up. You've got to take notes. You might watch a video, which in the spiritual world, you may have a favorite preacher, or your preacher, you may watch the videos or YouTubes from your church, or from special meetings for young people, or for ladies' conferences if you're a woman, or men's conference if you're a man. Get them little ideas that people that's went before you, that they found that work, something that gives you an edge, and keep that in your mind for times when you're really down, and you might think of a video, a YouTube preaching message that you might have heard, that you kind of tucked that away somewhere. And so to speak, in the military, you have like a utility belt or a vest, and you have some first aid maybe in one pocket, and you've got earplugs in another pocket. There's things you need to use at certain times. You got to remember where they are. You got to tuck scriptures away in your head, that when you have no Bible, the day we live in nowadays, you could be kidnapped. You could be in a store, and all of a sudden someone takes it over. You gotta be able to pull from that knowledge that you have stored or tucked away. And if you don't have them things tucked away, under a panic situation or scared fear, you may have nothing to draw from.
Right.
So you need them things and them experiences, whether it be small, whether it be a friend of yours had a parent or parents died in a car crash while they was on vacation. They wasn't with them. In church, you may have somebody that comes to church and they have no family. Well, you knew how to deal with that from an experience, and you help them people through it. You can do the same thing in a different area, but let them know they have family, whether they really have them or not, in God's church.
Okay. So you feel like there are things that you draw from, like from your childhood, lessons your parents taught you, and just kind of talk a little bit about your upbringing, because that's something else that I think I see. There are some young people who grasp, the lessons from their parents and elders, and there's some who just want to experience it themselves and have to have many falls. How do you feel your childhood played a role in your upbringing?
It played a lot. My dad was and mom were, their calling was foreign home missions, and that is go to towns where nobody wants to go, or go to a church, their first church. My dad was still in Bible college, and he took a church that the people came to the church Sunday morning, and the pastor and wife and kids never showed up, and they went across the street to a payphone and called, and the phone had been disconnected, and somebody drove to the house and the curtain was gone. They found out Monday morning that the money they were saving for a bigger church to build or buy was taken. Everything was taken. And my dad always, what the Lord had told him is, I want to put you between the needy and the need supplier. And I'd heard him say that, and but I grew up learning that there's always going to be people that need, and if you're blessed, you need to spread them blessings, because you may be the only person that they will thrive from what your experiences and your learning. And there's been many times when my mom and dad, for his faith, they would, he was going to Bible school, my mom working nights at the hospital so she could be at the, home during the day. And there were many times when the church didn't have many people. My mom was working, my dad was going to college, trying to become, a preacher and everything, and being a preacher at the same time. And there was one time I remember that my dad told my mom, said, I'm going to have to quit asking them people in the morning to jump me off, because they're going to think, you're a preacher, the Lord's failed you. Well, you're still people. And then I would hear the next day, my mom would go out to get the mail, come in, and I'd be in my room playing or something, and she'd say, "Thank you, Jesus." And my dad would go, "What?" She'd be crying. And stuff like this touches me. And maybe the day before, I heard my mom say, I looked at the Western Auto paper on my dad and said, there's a battery for $59.93, or if your tax stand would be this. And she goes, there's a check for exactly what that battery cost. And there would be times when they was low on groceries, because they have gave some of their groceries to other people in the church. And people would knock on the door, and you'd hear the tires squeal off. They'd go out and look, there was groceries on the front porch. But even in that, my mom and dad would still give to people from them groceries to somebody else in the church that was having it hard or lost their job. And growing up, I know faith. Because my dad and mom, they went forth and they did what the Lord told them to do. They didn't say, I ain't got the money, I ain't got the wherewithal. They found it and they done it. And the Lord will reward. And I've seen it with my eyes all growing up. I got out of church for a while, and I've been got in trouble with the law. I've been in jail a few times. I've done a lot of things, but where the Bible says if you raise them up in the right way, they'll come back. And I'm an example of that.
Yeah, and I think, obviously we are part of a church where our pastor invests a lot in the youth, a lot in our bus ministry. You and your wife work very intimately with the bus ministry and know the ins and outs. And so I want to know, probably one of the last questions. We experienced revolution. We've had 2 cycles of it, and it's evolved to include commit conference, and so now it's merged together. So what do you say for young people who really want to make impact? I want to know about how you think about revolution, just your personal experience. Obviously we're here and serving and doing a lot. What do you think about revolution? And what would you say to the young people who may be considering, who haven't attended yet, about coming to Revolution 2022? We're a bit of ways off still, right? But just making that decision and planning, and what exactly is the spirit behind Revolution for you?
Well, Revolution, I believe, first of all, is something that you need to put on a high priority, because things you build your body and your spirit, fill it full of, protect it, surround it with, is going to hold you, because we don't know what's coming. We don't know. We may have to go underground. Socialism is coming real strong, which is taking that freedom away. And where there's liberty, there is freedom. And that's part of why I believe they're trying to take the liberty away from us, not only spiritually, but socially, just your everyday lives. They're trying to take away things you might think is small now.
Right.
But, when you go to church, you need to pack everything you can get in there. You need to remember that. Even study it, get a little deeper in what the notes or the scriptures were. But revolution is something that many people I've talked to that has been to ones before. When I usually take care of the car lot, the parking and security and my security people, and a lot of them are told, man, I hope this year's is good or better than next year or than last year.
Yeah.
And it's a thing. It's like carrying a backpack, walking through life, putting things in there that's gonna sustain you.
Right.
First aid kit, so to speak. And that's what revolution is. It's little stuff that you need to pack everything you can in that little backpack of life. And everybody out here, they tell me that they use that all the way through the year, and they can't wait to get to the next one. And it is so grassroots kind of. And then when you add the commit, if you can stay for both, the commit, you hear about people finding drug addicts or being in a place that like I said, some churches, they don't even go in certain neighborhoods because they're afraid. Cops don't even go in certain neighborhoods. But we have a truth thing, a thing that is so important, that everything in life around us is trying to keep people from getting.
Right.
And this isn't just a round ring and you're in the water and you're drowning and you're dead. This is a life spiritual thing that you can spread to each family member that may be in prison, that may be in the hospital on life support. This is first aid that everybody should have, and it's called Jesus. Freedom, your real freedom comes through the Lord.
Right.
And coming to a revolution, it's just a power pack thing. You put commit with it. You go out of neighborhoods and see where we bring people from, and then if you're able to come to church on Sunday morning especially, and see some of these people that was picked up in different things that happened to them through life, whether it be drugs, whether it be mental, their capabilities wasn't grasping, they couldn't grasp a regular conversation. And you say, I picked this person up at 10 years old, and here they're 21 years old, and they got their own bus route. And they've got parents that, are alcoholics and in prison, and they really have no family ties. The church is their family, And what you do as a church and family, what we do here at Life Tabernacle is try to get more people to have a family or something resembling a family that they didn't have before. And just them, people seeing where they came from my neighborhood, and they go back out to the neighborhood and they bring them and they see what happened to them, and they're like, you know, it can be done because I know where they lived. I know how their mom and dad fought. You could hear them next door, or drugs being dealt in their front yard, but they kept going to church. And things like revolution are things that you keep in there. That's your armor. After a while, if you put it on enough, it's second nature to put that armor on when you go out in this world.
Yeah, I think one of the many things I love about Revolution is the intensity of it. We are a very intense church. We have intense worship. Right. We have intense outreach. Everything, we give it everything we got. Obviously, led by excellent leadership. But is there anything else you want to say to the young people before we kind of close this segment?
You know, this day and time we live in, we got to fight. We got to learn everything we can about living for the Lord and being strong. And the Bible says to have your mind set like a flint. Yeah. And that's to get into heaven and making it. And we need everything we can to get us there.
Yeah. So thank you, Brother Nathan, for your time. We really appreciate you sitting here talking with us. We're going to have some more gentlemen that we'll bring to you, and they'll talk about their service, and just hopefully it'll help encourage you and build your faith in the Lord, but also understand that these are very precious times we're living in, and we can contend for the faith. Scripture doesn't just instruct us to do it. We can actually do this and be successful. So thank you. We'll be coming back to you with more.